This is Brianna, and this is my project on B.F. Skinner, the father of operant conditioning. B.F. Skinner's concern was with how the environment shapes people's behavior, and his work was based on Thorndike's law of effect. And what Skinner did was he introduced the term reinforcement. Operant conditioning focuses on how consequences of a behavior affect the likelihood that a behavior will be repeated. So if an infant is praised when he or she takes a first step, the infant will be more likely to take another step. Skinner developed an apparatus similar to Thorndike's puzzle box called an operant conditioning chamber, also known as the Skinner box. He studied animals interacting with its controlled environment in the box. Operant chambers had at least one operandum that could detect the animal's behavior or response. It was most likely a response lever that could deliver food to the animal in the box. There was also light, sound, and electric grid floors to generate stimuli. Here's a picture. Here's the lever, the grid, the pellets, and the rat. And Skinner mostly used rats for his experiments. So, reinforcement. Positive reinforcement is the presentation of stimuli, and that increases the likelihood that a behavior will occur. An example of that is food and praise. So Skinner placed a hungry rat in the Skinner box. As the rat moved around the box, it would accidentally bump into the lever that would immediately dispense food to the next to the lever. The rat learned to go straight to the lever after a few times, and the reinforcement of receiving food ensured that the behavior, which was pressing the lever, would be repeated. Remember, positive is the presentation. Negative reinforcement is the removal of negative stimulus. It still increases the likelihood that a behavior will reoccur. Negative stimuli are usually something that's uncomfortable, either physical or psychological. So an example is seatbelt alarms. Once the seatbelt is hooked, which is the behavior, the annoying buzzing stops, which is the removal of the negative stimulus. So Skinner placed a rat in the Skinner box with an electric current that would cause discomfort to the rats. As the rats moved, it would accidentally knock the lever, which immediately turned off the electric current. So the rats learned to go straight to the lever after a few times of being put in the box. The reinforcement of removing the electric current ensured that the behavior, which was pressing the lever, would repeat. And he also taught the rats to avoid the electric current altogether by turning a light on just before the electric current came on, and the rats would wait for the light and then go straight to the lever. Other principles of operant conditioning are punishment, the application of unpleasant consequences to decrease the likelihood that a behavior will be repeated, and extinction, reducing unwanted behavior by withholding all positive consequences. An example of extinction is if a child is screaming until it is given candy at the grocery store, that child has learned that screaming would provide him or her with candy. So if the mother or father stopped giving the candy altogether at the grocery store while the child was screaming, the reinforcement was removed, and then the child would eventually stop. It's extinction. So Skinner and Furster, another psychologist, discovered different ways to deliver reinforcement. And these were schedules of reinforcement. They affect the response rate of learning the behavior and extinction, stopping of behavior. So the response rate is the rate at which the rat is pressing the lever, and the extinction rate is the rate at which the lever pressing is stopped. There's continuous reinforcement, where positive reinforcement occurs every time a behavior occurs. The response rate is slow, but the extinction rate is fast. Fixed ratio reinforcement, where behavior is reinforced only after the behavior occurs a specific number of times. So a rat was given a pellet every 10th time he pressed the lever. The response rate is fast, but the extinction rate is medium. There's fixed interval reinforcement, where one reinforcement is given after a fixed time interval, providing one correct behavior has been made. So every 15 minutes a pellet is delivered, providing at least he pushed the lever at least once. The response rate is medium, and the extinction rate is medium. There's variable ratio reinforcement, where behavior is reinforced unpredictably, and that's when a rat was given pellets in an unpredictable amount of time, no matter how often it pressed the lever. The response rate is fast, but the extinction rate is slow, and it's hard to distinguish that because it's so unpredictable. Variable interval reinforcement is the reinforcement is given after an unpredictable amount of time, providing one correct response has been made. So if a rat receives a pellet after 5 minutes, then after 2 minutes, then after 15 minutes, provided it presses a lever at least once between the time intervals. The response rate is fast, but the extinction rate is slow because it's unpredictable. Here's a graph of the schedules of reinforcement and my evaluation. Operant conditioning is valid when limited to specific areas of psychology, and it can be used to explain certain behaviors and certain phobias. However, operant conditioning does not take cognition or observational learning into account. Cognition-based theories focus on how thinking and reasoning change over time and the effects of these changes on development. Piaget was a cognitive-based theorist, and social learning theories were based upon the ideas that individuals are greatly influenced by the people around them, which is observational learning. Bandura was the creator of the social learning theory. Operant conditioning also does not account for innate abilities that adapt a species to an environment because all of Skinner's experiments were done in a controlled lab, so his findings may not be ecologically valid. They weren't in their natural habitat. And here are my references.